In this episode, I will take you down the rabbit hole of classical literature to discuss how writers of the past warned us about our pandemic of epic proportions and what we can learn about our new life from the world of books that survived centuries. How many times while discussing modern science or sociological conundra, I was oftenly lost and suffocated by abundance of information that was available from scientific journals or online, and also from some reliable or not so reliable sources. I said, okay, let me ask great minds of the literature for help and advice. And we used that on numerous occasions. When we talked about facing our fears, we actually used Miguel de Cervantes' great book Don Quixote. When we were speaking how much Facebook scares us as a phenomena, we used Roy Bradbury's fantastic dystopian novel. We also mentioned Hemingway a couple of times, and we also went to his home in Cuba and studied his work in detail. More we dive deeper into classical fictional literature, somehow it feels it can describe better our present life and even better future than current scientific literature. Science is always a couple steps behind, and it is normal and expected. We usually don't develop vaccines for sicknesses that are still not among us, but classical literature, on the other hand, understands our world better than we can wrap our mind around it. Biggest political turmoil, our broken hearts, dystopian future, or searching for the identity, whoever you are or whichever country you are born into, there is a book for you, for your problem somewhere in the library next to you. But let me first introduce myself. My name is Vladislav Radak. I'm writer and mathematician, and this is Fabric of Life, a show where I try to fuse what I do best, art and science, to answer humanity's most difficult questions. And on various occasions I use great literature to answer some scientific phenomena. I also use mathematics in order to write my books and make my twists and turns a little bit more complex and dynamic. Let me take you on one great literature adventure.
Hello, Instagram.
Bad boy. I'm on a mission and I won't stop.
Wash your hands, keep the distance, stretch, do yoga, be mindful of others, take care of your mental health. Seems whoever you are and wherever you live, in the last couple of years we all received the same set of almost redundant advices about our pandemic. But if you and your inbox are full and tired of those advices, maybe we should ask the great literature minds what they have to say about our pandemic. Sadly, they didn't have emails or TikToks back then, so they used some kind of different but also reliable technology to pass their advices. Books. They're like blogs, like really long blogs without ads. Here are 5 advices about our pandemic from some of the great minds of the past. Lesson 1. The rich always win. We all noticed that rich people had spectacular fun during the pandemic, finally enjoying their multiple homes, swimming pools, and keeping social distance from the middle class. Unfortunately, this is nothing new. Giovanni Boccaccio, an Italian writer who lived during the Black Death, writes in his collection of novellas called the Decameron, in which the characters lived through a plague of Florence. They shut themselves up in houses where there were no sick, eating the finest food and drinking the best wine, passing the time in music and such like pleasures. Others took to carrying flowers or scented herbs or perfumes in their hands in the belief that it was an excellent thing to comfort the brain with such odors. If you want to feel rich during the pandemic, buy yourself something you always wanted but never had time to enjoy. For example, a great book paired with decent wine. Lesson number 2. Wear a comfortable clothes. We all learned the importance of comfortable clothes to survive the pandemic. If you feel sad or bad that your business attire collects dust in your forgotten closet, don't be. The whole world adopted this 24/7 sweatpants dress code strategy, and this was not the first time. Byzantine historian Procopius, in his books 1 and 2 of his History of Wars, an account of the bubonic plague that hit Constantinople, writes, "And to put it in a word, it was not possible to see a single man in Byzantium clad in the chlamys, which were clothes often worn by high officials of the emperor at the time. Instead, every man was wearing clothes befitting private station and remaining quietly at home. In modern terms, the citizens of Byzantium also gave up on their official clothes and dressed into their version of stained yoga pants. They were eating chips and gossiped on balconies, their form of binging Netflix soap operas." Lesson number 3. Laugh and satisfy your appetites. They say laughter is the best medicine, but really, it's not. Vaccine is the best medicine. Just take the goddamn vaccine. But laughter helps. It helps us ease the pain. It helps us get through over our loss of loved one. It supports us through misery of loneliness of this pandemic. Boccaccio, again in the Cameron, writes, "The sure cure for the plague was to drink and to be merry, to go about singing and amusing themselves, satisfying appetite they could, laughing and jesting at what happened. They put their words into practice, spending day and night, going from tavern to tavern, drinking immoderately, or went into other people's houses, doing only things which pleased them." Catherine Ann Porter, in her novella written in 1990 about a woman who catches influenza during a pandemic, Pale Horse, Pale Rider, writes, "Don't you love being alive? Don't you love weather and the colors of different times of the day and all the sounds and noises like children screaming in the next lot and automobile horns and little bands playing in the street and the smell of food cooking?" Lesson number 4. Explore new hobbies. Are you just tired of people posting about their baking and homemade bread? Are you tired of people taking sweaty workout routines inside their homes, or tie-dyeing, or painting, or doing yoga stretches? Well, you're not alone, but according to classical literature, pandemic is the best time to start a new hobby. In his novel The Plague, French writer Albert Camus writes, "Everyone is bored and devotes himself to cultivating habits." But in his book, A Journal of the Plague Year, Daniel Defoe's main character recounts his experience living through the Great Plague of London in 1665. The character writes, "Such intervals as I had I employed in reading books and in writing down my memorandums of what occurred to me every day." The character also takes to baking bread. "I went and bought 2 sacks of meal, and for several weeks, having an oven, we baked all our own bread," and says of brewing his own alcohol, "I bought malt and brewed as much beer as all the casks I have would hold, and which seemed enough to serve my house for 5 or 6 weeks." Lesson number 5. We need to improve our world that should not be only ours. It was hard not to notice all the mistakes we did to our planet and our universe as humanity, and it was painful how obvious those faults were, but nobody noticed because we were busy playing humans, although it was written all along in our classical literature. In his comedic masterpiece, Douglas Adams in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy states, for instance, on the planet Earth, man had always assumed that he was more intelligent than dolphins because he had achieved so much. The wheel, New York, wars, and so on, whilst all the dolphins had ever done was muck about in the water, having a good time. But conversely, the dolphins had always believed that they were far more intelligent than man for precisely the same reasons. Master of horror and suspense Stephen King instead writes a novel about pandemic of weaponized strain of influenza that kills almost the entire world population. Show me a man or a woman alone, I'll show you a saint. Show me a 2 and they fall in love. Give me 3 and they'll invent the charming thing we call society. Give me 4 and they'll build a pyramid. Give me 5 and they'll make an outcast. Give me 6 and they'll revent prejudice. Give me 7 and in 7 years they'll reinvent warfare." men have been made in the image of God, but human society was made in the image of his opposite number and is always trying to get back home. Hey there, Vladislav Radak here. If you like this episode, consider subscribing to this channel. Every week I'm taking you on new adventures. I'm currently in Italy, where we shoot an episode about one and only Leonardo da Vinci. Until then, stay tuned and curious, and don't forget, libraries still exist.